Welcome to the Overflow Worship Podcast. We are excited to see God do something new in His church through worship, and we want to come alongside of those in worship ministry with encouragement and practical tools for the journey. Welcome, everybody, to the Overflow Worship Podcast. I'm your host, Andrea Olson. Thank you so much for joining us today. I am so excited to have special guests with me today, but first of all, just a reminder to all of our listeners, worship leaders, team members, the Overflow Worship Conference is coming up really soon in October. You can find all the details on our website. I've got great guests this year. Meredith Andrews, Todd Fields, Jacob Suter will all be joining me this year. And also joining me are today's podcast guests, EB and Shane Cole. Welcome. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Hey, y'all.
We're so glad to be here with you.
Well, I am so glad to have you here. I would love to kick it off today with a little bit about you, the both of you, your story, and tell our listeners about, where God has you now and kind of what brought you to where you are today.
Are you want to hear me?
You go first.
Okay, so
we are married. We're not brother and sister.
Yep, we've been married. We
clarify.
just celebrated 5 years last week. We had some awesome plans for that. They all fell apart because we've been sick. We've been on and off sick for a couple weeks, but very happily married. We met leading worship about 8 years ago, and that's been a huge part of our lives. We do that together, throughout the week, and we've been able to travel together doing it too. But we've always just shared a passion for music and a passion for, eventually, is more of a passion for worship than just music. And EB is from the North Georgia mountains, and I'm from right around just a little north of Atlanta. And
we live in Atlanta now, but we are in the middle of a move to Nashville, Tennessee. So we both have siblings. I have 2 younger brothers. We're all really close, family oriented. I grew up in a pretty musical family with my brothers. Sang from a young age. First did country music, and then thankfully God rerouted me from Nashville 10 years ago this year to Atlanta, where I met Shane at a church in town, and just started to give me a heart for worship and not just music, kind of like Shane said. So we teach here in Atlanta. We worship, we write, we record. Shane's working on a live recording with a friend this week, and we just take any opportunity that comes our way within reason. I always add that in. We've traveled with private event bands, and we do a lot of just hopping around. We kind of live in our car. We need a camper like you, Andrea.
Yes.
We need to put this thing on wheels.
Yes, it sounds like you guys have a lot of variety, and just God has you doing a lot of different things, which is really neat. So tell us a little bit more about what God has called you to as worship leaders in the Atlanta area.
Yeah, we've called a church called Brownsbridge home for a long time, but it's not extremely in an extremely official sense because we're not staff members or anything like that. When we were engaged, 5+ years ago, I was really involved at a church called Riverstone, where Daniel Basta was the worship pastor, and EB was leading all around North Point Ministries, essentially. And when we were engaged, we were trying to figure out, we were like, well, it's not like, after our honeymoon, I come home and I'm like, hey, hey, Riverstone, hey, Daniel, so my wife's a singer, so she's going to have a spot, to lead here, right? And vice versa, like EB couldn't walk into North Point and just say, hey, so I married a guitar player, do you have anywhere for me to play? We just knew that wasn't going to be the deal, but we also just didn't really see we were like, man, how are we going to lead together? Because we love this. We love doing this together, and we love sharing this.
And we love where we're at.
Yeah. So basically, God just blew our expectations out of the water. And without going into every last detail, Brownsbridge, which is a campus of North Point, there was just all these people in leadership that reached out and went way out of their way to show me love. I was, EB was a part of the family there, but I didn't have a lot of long standing relationships there. And like our premarital counselors came out of Brownsbridge. The pastor that preached our wedding was the lead pastor of Brownsbridge at the time. We just had all these people that were strangers to me to show us so much love. And I think it was just God's way of just giving us a home. And it's been pretty much, like I said, unofficially, like I didn't sign anywhere saying that Brownsbridge is my home church, but it's our home base, and we love it. And yeah, we always love to be back. And yeah, so we're there a lot. And then they have kind of a sister campus within North Point called Woodstock that we're really involved in. So 80% of the time, if we're leading worship in Atlanta on a Sunday morning, it's there. And then there's some occasions where we've led at my dad's church. My dad's a pastor, like still preaching and teaching. And then we have some we have so many friends that lead and music direct and pastor churches. So, if something cool happens with scheduling and we have some time where we can go be somewhere else, we try not to be too territorial about it.
Been in a season where we have totally seen the Big C church. I felt really bad about that for a while, about just hopping around, and we actually felt God lead us to apply for a job at a church for a little season. And when that door closed, we were like, okay, we felt like God told us those dreams and those visions that we had to lead in that specific place and make it a home. I want you to do that where I have you. So it's probably a lot like you, Andrea, with Overflow. We love people. We love God. We love the church. We love music. And he has connected all that in this season to kind of give us a peace with the floating. We love people a lot, and we connect really quickly. So thankfully, most places we've gone, they just feel like home that day, when we go and that's home. I'm sure that won't be the season that we're in forever. We dream of what it'll look like in years to come. But for now, with no kids yet, just a really fluid lifestyle, we've had the freedom to kind of hop around and see a lot of different styles of worship and meet a lot of different people. And it's been really cool to just open our mind and our heart to that.
I love that. And I love what you said about church with a big C. That is what Overflow is all about. And so I can really connect with that. Whenever I go into churches to lead worship or train worship teams, it just never ceases to amaze me that everywhere that I go, God is doing something new in that place. And he's called that place to a unique calling, a unique thing. And I just love that everywhere I go, I get to witness that. It just never ceases to amaze me.
I love that.
That's super cool.
We can get so in our own head about it, and our world gets so big. And I love the perspective that I've gained in this season of God is so big. He moves in more ways than I could ever imagine or picture. And I want to remember that as I lead in every place. And Shane does that really well. He travels a lot more than I do. I'm more of a home base kind of gal around Atlanta. At least I like to sleep in a bed, not a bus.
Yes, absolutely. I can definitely empathize with that. So thank you so much for sharing about your story, about your lives. It's just wonderful to hear more about you and for our listeners to connect with you a little bit more. So I'd love to jump to your experience teaching. You talked about that you both teach, and I see raising up young people as a huge need in the church, in the area of worship, and because they're the next generation, and we need to come alongside of them. And even just a few weeks ago, I was teaching a workshop, and we were on a break. And I turned around, and the worship leader was standing next to this kid, maybe 12 years old, and she was showing him very beginning drum techniques. Like, this is how you do it. This is the coordination. And it made me smile, and I really encouraged her that she was doing a great job, because that's what we need. We need people in the church who are willing to take the time to come alongside of these young leaders and these young worship team members or musicians, because there's a little bit of fear for a lot of them. And I mean, for us as adults too, let's be honest. And so they need somebody to come alongside of them and encourage them and say, yeah, you can do this. I want to help you. I want to pour into you. And that's what you guys are doing. So I would love it if you would just share a little bit about your experience teaching and what you're seeing in the younger generation.
Yeah, I love that, Andrea. I would imagine seeing that too and being really stoked that somebody was back there showing somebody that on the drums. For me, a huge reason that I teach, and I really never saw myself doing it. I studied PR and music business, and I wanted to be a country music singer, and I didn't really have the understanding yet of the importance of mentorship and wisdom. And kind of what happened for me was 10 years ago, I started to see some growth above the surface. Like I was singing out and I was leading, but I had no root system to support it. And it caused just a lot of unnecessary pain. And I mean, just like a flower with no root system, it didn't grow for very long.
Yeah.
And so that has been very important to me. I started to see growth in my heart, my life, my skill when people took time to sit with me and start to teach me. And so I was talking with Shane's dad a couple years ago, and I was kind of explaining to him what I'm seeing with young people and in myself. I miss the want to just sit and learn, and the reverence and the honor and the yearning for wisdom. I have to stay tight on myself to make sure I'm just always alone. And so I love seeing my students come in wanting to learn, because I know that a root system is being developed that's going to support their growth and not cause pain in their life and in their craft. My students range from 9 to usually my older students will just come in seasons, just because I can give them a lot and then they can go and take it on their own. Right now, most of them are seniors in high school. I get really excited when they come in and they just want to learn everything I teach. I'm always like, man, this is a life lesson for me.
Yes.
breathing exercises. Like if I can learn to do that in Atlanta traffic, I'm going to be solid. I guess does that answer your question, Andrea?
Yeah, absolutely. I love hearing from other people who are passionate about training young people, because I think that it's such a huge need. And I love what you said about always being a learner. That's one of my mantras for my life too, because I never want to get to that point where I think I've learned everything, like I know everything, I've got this, and I don't need to learn anymore. So I always want to be in that posture. And I just encourage anybody who's listening, if you're a young person who you want to be a worship leader, you want to be on worship team, let that be your attitude, that you have an attitude of always wanting to learn.
It makes me think a lot of I love 1st and 2nd Timothy, where it's just that example. It's Paul teaching Timothy. If Timothy had not had that, it could have looked a lot different. And I reference that a lot as I'm praying and thinking through my lessons and teaching and mentoring. I flip back to that a lot, just to remind myself of the importance of how much, it's really like why we're here. I heard this a while back and I've really held on to it, but I think that it's important to lead with the mindset that we are going to be replaced. I want to lead my people so well that they far exceed what I could ever do, And I get it. Like, we love to be out front and to have success. We're human, we have flesh, and we love to have that. But I think it's just not, we got to get out of the way at some point,
If you're on the teaching end of something and not on the student end of something, you just don't want to lead from a place of like being scared about not always being the one on stage or the one behind the microphone or like the main one or the one that always ... And I think it's a Christian principle too. If we're passionate about discipleship, I think it's really important that we make sure we're pouring into other people or getting poured into, to have just a really teachable, very, very teachable attitude. And you said posture, I think. Just an open posture of like, just being open to advice and open to, even sometimes a little bit of criticism.
Yeah.
Just not being scared of that. I'm 31. I've played music full time for 12 years, and I was doing it. I was traveling 4 years before that. And I mean, there are still times where I hear something from somebody else and I'll find a reason in the moment, like, oh, they're younger than me, or, oh, they're just this, or they don't really know, where I come from. I feel my pride welling up and I got to like smash it down,
Yeah.
because it's not right. I don't believe in that. And when I'm teaching, I expect that from my students too. Sometimes I'm like, man, I wish you understood that I loved you and I respect you and I'm proud of you. But like, sometimes I just got to, sometimes people just got to, you got to be straight talkers sometimes,
Yeah, absolutely.
So I expect that from my kids. And then, God will put me in a position where I've got to humble myself and take it.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's move to the practical side. I would love if you would offer some tips, first of all, for the worship leader. So, worship leaders who are wanting to draw in new people and train them and equip them to be on the worship team. What are some things that you've done or that you've seen that have worked really well to really come alongside and bring people in?
I wrote something down about this. I think it's really important to understand that different churches have different philosophies and different passions about their teams. And I have been extremely close and involved in both sides of the, I guess spectrum is the right word. Like, you have people on one side of the spectrum that everybody is basically kind of like treated like staff. Like, there's these professional expectations regarding anything having to do with music or creative arts. And then you have the other end of the spectrum where, it's just it's a really big part of the church, or the pastor's heart, pastors plural, their hearts, that, they want a really strong, awesome volunteer culture within their music teams. I think that there is a way for both styles to turn towards the upcoming generation and pour into them. Because when I see a culture that's like really heavy on like, well, it's professional, or we have these crazy high expectations, or we do these insane auditions, or you gotta be able to do all these things, to play here, or whatever, like a real close to the chest kind of culture like that. I've seen a lot of missed opportunity for people that maybe they're not 100% in a place where, they're equipped to play in that church culture. There's also no bridge between someone who can and someone who can't. So, if you're in a position where you're playing and you're gonna be brushing shoulders with people who can't, I feel like leadership in that church needs to bridge that and give, I've seen like team nights, or it could be, EB, a lot of times at Brownsbridge, she'll bring her students to rehearsal.
Yeah.
Our music director is really, really kind, and like, we'll give them an in-ear pack, just because like she knows that from teaching her lessons, the weirdest things to jump to, like when you go from like a lesson room to a stage or a studio or something, is your ear mix, and how weird it is to sing with headphones on or in-ear monitors in or whatever. So she'll just bring them and be like, hey, hang out for dinner, hang out for sound check, hang out for rehearsal, or come shadow me on a Sunday. That's so cool. And like, it happened organically. It was just Evie's call. And again, like, we're not seen as like, leaders or whatever in any kind of like staff sense. It was just something Evie as a singer suggested and kind of asked permission, like, hey, can I start bringing my students? And she did it. If you're on the other side of the spectrum, where your church is really, really passionate about volunteers, I think that church should, and this is just my opinion, but I think that church should really make a huge investment in their volunteers and in their players, in their worship leaders. And I think that they need to give them access to learn more. And I think they need to help them get access to like teach, to have lessons and coaching. And I think wherever you are on the spectrum, I think you need to be going to conferences, and I think you need to be hearing about how people around the world do things. And I think you need to just be always chasing down, like, what's God doing around the world? What are we have all these things in common. We all are going for the same thing in all these churches around the world. How can we make sure we're 100% in the know on everything going on? And also, how can we make sure we're sharing what we've learned at our church with other people? So anyway, that's what I wrote down about it.
I love that. I think that's such great advice and such helpful input for all of us in the church, just good perspective. And, I think when I talk to worship leaders, I know that one of their biggest concerns is that it's a lot of work, to train up young people. It's a lot of work to give them lessons or whatever the case may be. And a lot of the people that Overflow works with are worship leaders who, this isn't their full-time job. They might be a complete volunteer, or maybe this is their part-time job. And so to try to find time to fit that in is really difficult. But, it pays off in just infinite dividends, because it's an investment in the next generation, like we were saying earlier. And so it's huge. And I think that as a worship leader, you'll never regret pouring into young people and pouring into the next generation of worship leaders. So let's take a look at the other side. So young leaders, young people who want to be on the worship team or who want to be worship leaders, what can they do? What are some tips that you could give them? Because obviously they can't just wait for the opportunity to plop into their lap. And we want to make sure that they're ready and everything like that. So what can they do to show that they're ready and show that they're serious?
You want it? I took all the last one. I feel bad about that.
Oh, don't feel bad. You agree with that. Shane's great with practical things. I'm more of the heart gal. You have a heart too, though. When Shane was talking and you were just talking, Andrea, I think that it reminds me of like building a house. Like if you cut corners, you're gonna see, on both ends. Like sometimes I was talking with a friend the other day who's volunteer worship team. She's training her worship leaders, and they had a huge budget cut, and she's trying to figure out how to make everything work. And just through our conversation, it led. It comes back to that. It's like I think the church and the young people, like, you just can't cut corners. You can, but it's going to show in your build, So I think as young people that want to get involved and step up, I think that prioritizing getting equipped, putting in the work, the heart prep, all of those things, and there's a confidence that meets you there.
Yeah.
Because I have a lot of gals that I've always said in my lessons, my vehicle is, technical vocal skills, the technical part of what we do. And music is the vehicle. But my destination is always a more confident, joy-filled, peace-filled person at the end of our time together. And I just want, we don't have kids yet, but I'm looking at these girls like they're my daughter. So I would think that this is the way God's looking down at us. I'm so proud of them, and I want them to believe what they're doing is wonderful, because I see it, and it might not mean every note is perfect, but I love when I get a glimpse of that confidence. But I think that you don't just get false confidence. You put work in, and it leads, a confidence meets you halfway. Be faithful where you're at.
Yeah.
You're for a reason, and there's a lesson there for you to learn. And don't cut corners. Put in the hard work. Wake up the 30 minutes earlier to read. So, a psalm a day, a psalm a week. They're worship songs. They're already there. And just put in the hard work. Pay for lessons.
Hard work. Did you come up with that?
Hard work. Yeah,
oh my gosh.
I know.
I love it.
Sometimes I'm like I think I'm like a Hallmark book.
Yes.
Evie is chicken noodle soup for the soul.
Yeah.
Like 10.10.
I know, I'm like, you're building a house, cut corners. But yeah, put in the hard work. Don't cheat yourself out of each spot that you're in, because and this is kind of my big thing at worship at Overflow that I'll talk about, but like, our life is a stage, and no matter if right now you want to be leading but you're teaching at school, you're a teacher, or you want to be leading and you're at a desk all day, the term worship leader sometimes I think boxes me in. Like, we're all leading worship where we're at. So be faithful where you're at.
Yeah. Amen.
Put in the work. Don't cut corners. Be grateful for where you're at. Soak up all of everything from the spot that you're in. I've been calling it take advantage of your terrain, because we were just out in West California, and I learned all about vines, and I'm like, take advantage of the terrain that you're in. Gain all of the things that you can from the spot that you're in. And if you're in college right now and school is taking up a lot, then do it. You're going to have songs come from that, where you're at.
Here's what I'd say. I'd say yes to what my lovely wife just said. Plus, I would say never, ever, ever apologize about how God wired you. There's so many different ways to express what someone who loves the Lord is trying to say. There's a way to do it with a piano and a vocal. There's a way to do it with a hymn. There's a way to do it with, Hillsong Young and Free, synthesizer vibes, and don't ever feel like you got to apologize for the way that God made you. Like, certain things resonate with certain people, but I think that you should look at your gift, like whatever it is, whether it's voice, or you have a knack for guitar sounds, or you play a beautiful piano. Just look at it like you're stewarding a gift, just like you would steward your finances.
Yeah.
We have a limited amount of time to work with, in general, which is kind of existentially dark. Sorry to go there. In a given week, we have a little bit of time where, we can, and I'm always telling my students this, it's so funny and so cliche when I'm like, yo, so, how'd everything feel that I sent you from last week? Oh, I didn't get a chance to practice. And I'm like, oh, really? So did you watch any, how about The Bachelor on Monday? Oh, yeah. Oh, really? So you had time to watch The Bachelor, man? Come on, dude, run a couple positions G major. Like, it'll help,
On the commercial.
Yeah. So yeah, I think looking at your gift, like you're stewarding it, I don't know, that helps me. So that's my advice. Be 100% yourself, but just look at it like you're making little investments over time. It really will pay off. And like Eby said earlier, just put a lot of thought into your foundational, the building blocks of your gift. Just make sure how music works. And I just think God does super cool things with it throughout your life. Again, we're fairly young. I can't wait to see what all God does with it in whatever years we have left doing it.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's so key for all of us to remember that God has called each one of us to something unique, and we don't want to negate the unique giftings and the unique things that He's put inside of us, because it's for a purpose and it's for a reason, and not to ignore the waiting season either. You talk about blooming where you're planted, or, being faithful where you are. And that's so important. I think a lot of times we're always looking ahead thinking, okay, where do you want me to be? Where do you want me to go? And we miss these moments where we're supposed to be in waiting for a reason, because God wants us to grow. EB, you talked about those roots growing down deep. And, that's something that is just so important for us to remember, and to not look over those seasons where we need to invest in ourselves and in our craft and in those unique things that God has set before us. And, I see something interesting in the churches that I work with, because there's this question of, do we need to sound exactly like the recording? Of whatever the song is, you can fill in the blank. And when I work with them, it's interesting to just encourage them and say, well, you can. I love that song. I love the way that, it sounds, and I love the instruments. But let's think about your ministry and your church and the personnel that you have and what God has called this ministry to. And, be you, be the unique ministry and church that God has called you to be.
Actually, I did a really cool exercise at was that a worship leaders retreat that we were on or something?
I don't remember.
I think it was. And they kind of did like a women's and men's breakout. And in the men's breakout, the guy teaching he was like, go get by yourself. And I want you to just pray to ask God to reveal to you who you would be without whatever it is that you identify yourself as. So, I kind of I was like, okay, silly exercise. So I like go out by the lake or something. Yeah, it was by the lake. I sat on a little dock thingy. Sorry, I've never been into water life. Water culture is not my thing, but it was like a dock thing. And I went out and sat, and it was pretty, and I started praying. I was like, okay. So I definitely I'm Shane Cole, and I play guitar. Okay, that's one thing. I have a huge beard. Okay, that's another thing. So I started envisioning my life dang, what if I didn't play music? What would I? And when I started envisioning my life without music, I was like, oh dang, I don't like myself as much when I'm imagining that. And then oh, if I didn't have the beard, no one would be like, oh, Shane, the guy with the huge beard. And then I thought about, I kind of have a crazy family story, and I thought about if I didn't have that. Anyway, I started envisioning it, and I forgot about the exercise, and then I felt God talk to me, and He said, I just felt Him clearly say, you're an encourager of people.
Wow.
So I try to remember that, before I'm the guy who hits the G chord perfectly, or before I'm the guy who teaches a nice 30-minute guitar lesson, or before I'm the guy with the cool long beard, or before I'm the guy married to the coolest chick ever, E.B. Cole. I'm an encourager of people. And so I'm really glad that you said that word, because it just made me think the music thing is cool, but it is just a medium. It's such an awesome gift and opportunity to be able to do it.
I had a friend encourage me to do that a couple of years ago, and taken years for God to speak and reveal, for me to grow. Well, it doesn't take Him that long to speak. It takes me that long for me to get it.
Yeah.
But it changes everything when you know what He, God, what did you make me to do apart from the medium of music? What's underneath that? Because it is just a medium, and it's an amazing medium, and I'm so glad to do it, but I want to be okay without it all.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. And I think this is such a great place to end our conversation, and just a piece of encouragement and wisdom for all of us. I'm encouraged by this too, to really take a minute, take a step back and be quiet and ask the Lord, who did you make me to be? Not what did you make me to do, but who did you make me to be? Because all of the things that we do, music, leading worship, picking songs, you fill in the blank, but those things are going to go away, or they could go away. And we need to have that foundation. I love what you talked about earlier about deep roots. That's actually our theme for the Overflow Worship Conference this year. And so I just love this. I love how God works and just brings these little bits of encouragement along the way. It comes from Colossians 2:7 that says, let your roots grow down into Him. And so that's a bit of encouragement for all of us to just lay that foundation and dig down deep.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
One last thing. When we were out in California, I saw these huge trees.
Oh yeah, this is
They're
big.
absolutely ginormous.
This is good.
And in this book I'm reading, Andrew, you have the book Roots. You're reading for something else. And the school we teach at is Root and Music Coaching. So funny.
Yeah, and we all jokingly call it roots.
Yeah, we do. But I was learning the roots underneath trees are always at least 3 times bigger than the tree.
Wow.
And I'm looking at these huge trees and the growth, and you're right, like storms can come, the tree can fall, but roots are everything, like he's the vine, we're the branches. Apart from that, there's no fruit. And I want a life full of fruit, and I want that for everybody listening here, everybody on Overflow, everybody. I think that's just the abundant life He has for us. So if we can develop those 3 times bigger roots, then what kind of growth is that going to be able to support? That's exciting.
Yeah, it is exciting. Well, EB, will you pray us out today? I would love that if you'd pray over our listeners.
Yes. Lord, thank you just for who you are and how present you are in our life. And even if we don't feel you there, thank you that you are there. And help us open our eyes to that, open our mind to that, our heart to that, no matter where we're at today, listening, if we're driving, if we're at work, if we're super down or we feel great. Like, thank you that you meet us there. And would you let all these words that we've spoken be seeds planted in hearts? And would you fill in the gap and water the seed and grow something beautiful that only you can do? Thank you that we can expect fruit with you, that you care too much about us to let us grow without something to support it, because you know that leads to pain and destruction. So would you give us just a yearning for a root system versus growth, that we would be excited about growth, of course, all for you, for your glory, for your kingdom, but give us an excitement for the root system. Give us a gratitude for the root system. Give us contentment and just rest and peace as that root system is being developed. Help us to take advantage of the terrain that we're in, and just give us hearts and lives full of gratitude for who you are, what you do. And so I thank you that you know every single person that's hearing this. You know them intimately, personally. You fully know them. You fully love them. And you have an abundant, full life for them. So help us just to rest in that, to live a life of rest, that we would just breathe. We could breathe in deep, breathe out, and just be peaceful beings, that we could be beings and not doings. Thank you that we're beings and not doing. So would you even now just go before us and prepare the rooms for overflow? Thank you for Andrea, for everybody involved and every person coming. Just prep our hearts and our minds for what you're going to do in the months ahead. Just prep our hearts for the way you want to move in our life and in our church, and in your Big C church. So thank you, Jesus. We love you so much, and it's in your precious name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Shane, EB, thank you so much for joining the Overflow Worship Podcast today. It was such a joy to have you and to hear your hearts. So thank you so much. And for all of our listeners, just a reminder that the Overflow Worship Conference is coming very soon, October 11th and 12th in Wilmer, Minnesota. You can get all of the details on our website. And both Shane and EB will be with us in person at the conference. And I'm so excited to have them focusing on young people. EB is going to be teaching a special VIP class on Friday before the worship night that is geared towards young worship leaders and young team members. So worship leaders, bring your youth leaders, bring your youth team members, and they want to pour into them. So Join us, get the details on our website, and thanks for listening. Thank you so much for spending your time with us today. If you'd like to stay connected, please subscribe to our podcast. And if you want to learn more about Overflow, visit overflowworship.com. And remember, we love the church. We are for you and we're praying for you. Have a great day.